as promised, we have a very interesting talk today set up for you. Earlier you heard about the industry perspective on AI from Mohawk, and then from Vincent, very interesting talk about the cutting edge research at Google Robotics. And now we want to switch gears and talk about just how do you take this wonderful AI and push that through your organization, to have more of these AI projects going through. You all hear about these, 26,000 people, depending on how you count it, that really know about machine learning, AI, deep learning. And then there's the rest of the world that need to benefit from the benefits of AI, right? So how do we actually take this cool technology that's being constantly changed, it's shaping up with a huge potential of changing industry, and actually make that happen? Our talk today is on operationalizing AI, how to take that AI and make it work for the real world. And we're lucky here to have two great speakers. Nick Mayer, who's an entrepreneur in residence and also a lecturer at the Martin Trust Center at MIT Sloan. And also we have here Catherine Gallagher with the MIT Quest for Intelligence, as John mentioned earlier, a big initiative at MIT. So we're looking forward to hearing from them, their perspectives in operationalizing AI. Great. Maybe we can get started with just your perspective from the academic, from the working with startup approach, on what are some of the challenges in operationalizing AI?
Oh my God. Yeah. What's your perspective on AI and working with it? No pressure. Thanks for leading with an easy question. My perspective is, so I started a company called Relativity 6. What we do is we predict which of your customers are going to churn in the next 60 days or up to 6 months. And we make a recommendation of what you can actually do about it. So that's very custom to the organization. So we've worked in a lot of industries, optimizing private jet sales for aircraft OEMs, online retail like West Elm, Zipcar. None of them want to pay for AI, and it's purely an organizational structure thing. The people that that get excited about technology like ours are a marketing department that don't get paid bonuses when they keep more customers necessarily. They just keep their salaries, so they're not actually trying that hard to use technology like ours. And they also equate stuff like us to a $1,000 a month software as a service model, and AI is actually really expensive and needs to be customized to the real people in the real world and how they work every day. When we moved into financial services, insurance, credit card stuff, all of a sudden we hit a sector of the industry that, one, paid their employees for actually keeping customers around and valued products like our, they're used to pricing risk. They pay us what we're worth. So if we make them $1 million, they'll pay us $300,000, which some of the investors in the room is really interesting because that's just a 3x ROI, which is pretty cool. Whereas in the tech world, you can sometimes 10 or 100x ROI. It's a long-winded way of saying that just because you have really cool technology that works, there can just be major people issues and organizational structure issues get in the way. And that's the number one what's up, man? That's the number one thing that kills prospects for us going forward.
Picking up on something that you just said about institutional structure and how that can get in the way of really being able to leverage AI in your institution. I have a bit of a financial AI background as well, and something that's really common is to
Are you looking for a job? Always be recruiting.
Very happy at MIT West. But one of the things that I've seen before is that you will have people in the organization whose entire bonus structure is dependent on other parts of the organization not doing so well. It can be very difficult to then say, hey, I'm from the AI team, I want data from you guys. Unless there's actually some policy and precedent for them to then give over the data, they might not want to, and they might make it somewhat difficult. There's also a more generalized pressure that I think a lot of people feel when they're not in AI and they hear about AI coming to their company. is this going to affect my job? Am I going to be replaced by AI? And so you have to be somewhat conscious of that particular fear and explain to the workforce, have some transparency around how you intend to use it, and talk a little bit more about having the humans in the loop and how AI often, as we heard earlier in the Google talk, it's not quite at the point where AI is going to replace higher level cognitive functioning that humans really excel at. So maybe it will come in and take over some of that low level functionality. At Quest, we often provide projects to labs that need manual hand labeling data automated. They're right now using grad students to do this. This is something that is very easy for an algorithm to take care of and free up those grad students to do something that really leverages their skill set. So being conscious that your actual institutional structure might disincentivize your employees from cooperating and leveraging your data sets to give you the best advantage.
Yeah, one of my favorite ways of talking about one of the things you mentioned is, I think one of the true magical properties of modern machine learning AI techniques is that we can get the same results with crappier data. And that can mean it's data that is not as expensively acquired, it's not paid for from external third parties, it's really, really easy to get. And this is like it just minimizes the number of favors you need to ask for in your organization to get something done. And if you can build technology that just halves the number of favors that anyone in your org needs to ask for to get something done, I mean, you're not just twice as productive, you're exponentially more productive because you can do more tests in the same period of time. In our case, we use just like transactional data. In most industries, that's the first to actually be organized because you need to know who pays for what so you can file taxes and things like that, and bill people. So in our case, we're like, how much can we do if we only use transaction data? And then when we run into a problem, instead of saying, can we get more data to help that, we say, oh, we better do some R&D, which is a different way of thinking as opposed to just let's get more data from elsewhere.
Yeah, I think the interesting question about data, and I apologize, I was informed my mic wasn't working, so hopefully my natural projection helped earlier. But something that we're talking about a lot right now is data. And I think often people, when they hear about how do I bring machine learning to my organization, think mainly about the algorithms. And it's not so much necessarily about the algorithms as it is about the data that you're providing. So a big mistake that I've seen across organizations is when people bring in machine learning capabilities either internally or trying to outsource it externally, they end up doing it in such a way that it cuts the people who work most closely with different sorts of data that they're trying to leverage out of the loop. And one of the most important things when you're actually trying to use AI is to make sure that you're structuring your data in a way that you're asking the right questions and that you're actually answering them appropriately. And the people in your organization who work with that data in that sector are going to be the ones who are most valuable to you.
Yeah, I don't trust any startup that doesn't ask your data scientists for advice. If they don't do that, they're just totally full of it. And then anyone who says they can just come in with a pre-trained algorithm and apply it to your problem, unless it's purely automation or cost reduction stuff that really is the same everywhere, I do not buy that at all.
Another
just teeing you up.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Well, no,
or completely changing the topic.
Another thing to consider with this as well is that a lot of companies think strictly about one side or the other when it comes to applying AI for their organization. So either they're trying to do it to offer some sort of customer service, and that's how they want to offer or apply their AI. And they completely forget that you can actually use AI to optimize your own internal services and really find inefficiencies in your internal organization structure. So that's another big thing when it comes to
Yeah.
Great. I should make sure we also have chance for you guys to ask the questions you have in operationalizing AI, because it sounds like we can have a real ongoing conversation with our
I see
speakers
two
here.
or three people that are asleep. I think we should ask.
Pop quiz. What did I just say?
Yeah. What do you think of AI?
While I give you a chance for you to think about your question, I want to ask one of mine. I know for the question intelligence, you're thinking about how to have a model of addressing one lab or one group's question in a way that's scalable for other entities. Can you talk a bit about that as an example for a group?
Sure. So to give a specific example, something that's really common at MIT for different labs is that they have all sorts of image data, often 3D image, and they want to be able to label different parts of this image data. And this can be across materials sciences, this can be in neuroimaging. So these are all very different data sets, and yet they share this single thing in common. What they're trying to do with it is to isolate certain segments of the image and label them. And that's a pretty straightforward just image segmentation and labeling problem. So how do we then build a model that anyone can use, including if you have no background in machine learning, maybe a little bit of Python, although often people are just like, can't you do this in MATLAB? How do you offer that to everybody so that with no background in AI, they can approach this and extend it specifically for their own data set and for their own purposes? And we liken it often to trying to make sure that you're no longer asking people to have a PhD in machine learning just to use machine learning. Like, we don't want them to have to build the car from scratch, but we also don't want to just like give them the keys and be like, go on, drive away. And by the way, did you ever learn about like splitting your data into train and test and validation sets? So there's kind of this sweet spot between us being able to provide something that's publicly available, widely generalizable, will also address those specific needs for each person, but then also providing the scaffolding and the documentation for them to use it wisely and well, and to be able to analyze it to make sure that it is actually addressing their needs.
Yeah, questions from the audience? Maybe we can sort of have a sense of where you are with your AI. Who here have more questions? Your concerns more on the technical side of AI.
Who here has spent too much money with IBM? Is that anyone from IBM here?
Yeah, I have a question. So AI seems to really gain trend in manufacturing technology for vision inspection. They're trying to eliminate the human who has the capability to really judge parts for quality. I'm curious what your perception is of using AI to really operationalize it into manufacturing technology related to vision inspection to eliminate the human from the loop.
You're the one doing a lot of vision stuff.
Vision, and I think actually
We were just talking about it actually.
You can all hear the question, right? The question's on vision and operationalizing vision AI
In manufacturing.
in manufacturing.
I think the Google talk earlier did a fantastic job of covering kind of where we are with robotics, especially in manufacturing, coming from closing that loop between vision and action. In terms of how feasible it is to remove a human from that loop at the moment, I don't know if we're quite there yet to take them entirely out of the system. I don't know if we ever really want to be there. We might not. I can't really answer that at the moment that the technology is right now. The machines really do excel at these low-level, basic visual motion tasks, but there still is this element of higher-level cognition that usually does, at some point or another in that circuit, become relevant or necessary, even just showing the training process. So I'm aware of a couple companies that in order to get the robotics to do what they want the first time, they really do need to show it over and over how a human would approach it, and it learns from that. I'm not sure if that answered your question.
That's a generally interesting idea, though, for everyone. The minute you start implementing AI systems or automated systems with new user interfaces, you're now creating new data, which is how does a human interact with the system. And that new data itself, a year later, can be much more valuable than the initial model you built. So that happens with us.
I kind of like to play this, like Apple have or Google have there. I have an app for that. I have a startup for that thing. So we do have actually coming up later. Yeah, later on today during the 2:30 rapid fire pitch, a startup, Akasha Imaging, that we'll be talking about sort of using AI vision for inspection. We have another one, Fringe AI, that does inspection. They're working with both meat inspection and manufacturing inspection, looking at point clouds and how to visualize that. So it's very much an area of changing human development. Other questions? Area of AI you're looking at? Great.
How do you deal with the heterogeneity in, how do you deal with this different speed and innovation cycles, say manufacturing versus in consumer electronics? I mean, you get a new smartphone probably every year or so, but if you look at machinery in small and medium-sized, like manufacturing and machinery in small and medium-sized enterprises, they're not going to replace it every other year. So whatever you put on there now needs to be future-proof, but at the same time you need to deal with technology and need to incorporate maybe data from technology that has no sensors that maybe has been there for 30 years. How do you deal with that?
My quick answer is, at least from a startup perspective or a new venture perspective, you got to pick one or the other, because you nailed it. They're so completely different, but the cost structure that you have is going to be so different. If you got a future-proof, then you got to build something that the replacement cycles every 10, 15 years, opposed to every year or 2 years. I mean, you have to charge differently. You have to find orgs that will actually pay for that amount. I mean, that's why the first thing I talked about with my big hurdle with deploying AI is finding someone. We get a lot of echo here off my name card, I think, but is dealing with what organizations are actually willing to pay for and how they're willing to pay for it and in what cycle. And I can't just force technology or product onto two completely different types of companies. Even if the only difference is they want the same product, but they pay for it differently, huge difference. It's kind of a non-answer. Unfortunately, it's actually how I would deal with it.
I want to go back to the earlier question you had about the human in the loop. Maybe you can elaborate on that, because I do think it's important to think about that, how to relieve some of the fears people have about facing. You see these studies, McKinsey study, this study, other study. What huge percent of jobs will be wiped out by AI? But how can you actually make AI a human be part of the loop?
Yeah, we were just talking about this. I mean, I don't want to take your point, but effectively, some jobs should go away.
Yeah, I think that is something that a lot of times I hear people try to gloss over in this field, where they say, oh no, it's all about keeping the human in the loop. And quite frankly, actually, there are tasks that we've learned that algorithms are simply better suited for than humans. Often, at this point at least, these are the more rote and repetitive tasks that maybe a human doesn't want to do. Again, the manual labeling of data sets. I mean, we're talking about grad students spending hundreds of hours for single lab, and so collectively hundreds of thousands of hours across labs all over the country. And I'm pretty convinced that these graduate students are all bright and bushy-tailed and being put to better use in something that actually leverages their full skill set and their higher level cognition. Going forward, it is a much bigger question about how do we make people comfortable with AI, and that's something we think about a lot at the Quest for Intelligence. In the space where I'm working, we really do. I mean, as a personal anecdote, I find that whenever I introduce myself to people and they're like, "Oh, what do you do?" and I'm like, "Oh, I'm an AI software engineer," and 5 minutes later, I'm having another conversation about Terminator or Skynet. So I think that it's a really deep-seated fear in people that we are fundamentally changing the way that we work and the way that we think and the way that we interact with the world around us. And humans are somewhat evolutionarily averse to change and very evolutionarily averse to rapid change. So how do we try to mitigate that, and how do we make people in your organization comfortable with the fact that the parts of their job that they're doing right now might not all exist for a human in the future, and that might be okay, and maybe they will be able to do something that they enjoy more because it does demand a little bit more of the human creativity that is not currently present in these algorithms?
I think there's a way of deploying and a set of use cases where you can deploy AI, which actually accelerates the human creative process and even the scientific method, which is this: if you can get a group of people that are excited about predictions and actually pay attention to them. Instead of saying, doing a test in your organization, making a change and seeing what happens in 6 months, and maybe you have a metric 6 months down the line, revenue or customer acquisition or something like that. It's a pretty long delay to wait for results, but if you've got leading indicators, if you've got predictions of, say, 30 days in advance, how is this metric going to change based on what's happening right now, you can cut down your iteration cycle. You can make a change and then see how the predictions are changing. And you can keep going or you can change where you're going. But what ends up happening is your frontline people, especially your customer-facing people, start building up an intuition of what is going to happen. And they're just getting more inputs and getting more creative. And then you're creating more data about human will try something with a customer, it'll start to work. And they'll keep doing it more, and other people around them will keep trying to talk about it. There's a really interesting hybrid of human and machine that we're actually seeing start to work, but it depends on focusing more on optimizing how humans understand the predictions as opposed to making the most accurate prediction possible. I'll sacrifice 10% accuracy if things are more explainable or insights can be generated from the model we choose.
Can you give an example of that, what you see with customers, how they have actually tried to work with prediction and be smarter about the usage?
Yeah, so for example, one customer we have is the third largest insurance broker in the world. And we actually, at first we built them predictions where 30 days in advance, every broker gets a list of all the policies under their control that are about to churn. They're at risk of churn. This could be 40% likely, so it's not guaranteed, but you should call the customer. And the goal here was the fitness function was actually maximizing the percentage of time brokers called these people, not necessarily retaining them. They got that knowledge, they started playing with different scripts, they started sharing what's working, they asked us questions like, hey, we called these customers, we're seeing a lot of these patterns, is that true in the data? Then we started building features for the brokers themselves to actually say, is this churn happening in this industry? So they'll ask the platform questions. But all that came from actually the goal to be have employees interact with the predictions at all, not necessarily make them perfectly accurate. If we'd used later, once they trusted the accuracy, we actually, the second iteration became a more modern neural network structured approach, and then we had to do all these things to get insights out. But at first, it was a pretty simple model that we could say, hey, here we could extract features from it, like region and industry and things like that, to get it, so they could have an intuition of, hey, what is predictive here? What should I talk about on the phone?
I'd actually really like to piggyback off of one of those points, because it is an excellent takeaway, is that when we talk about humans in the loop, it's really good to remember, and data. Bringing back, it's not just the algorithms, it is really, really about the data. There's this interesting thing that in machine learning, most of the major advances are not made after the relevant algorithm is developed, but rather when the relevant data set is produced for that algorithm to really take advantage of. And humans are the ones, again, going back to make sure you're not cutting your data people out of the loop. They're the ones who are gonna know, hey, we've got this data set that I think would be really great to ask this question of. And this particular question would be better answered by an algorithm than a human. But to be able to identify those opportunities in the first place, that is still solidly within the human realm.
Yeah. That happens all the time. Probably not. It's, one of the struggles with data scientists in a lot of organizations is they're often not given the business context to know how their predictions would actually be used and what they need to do to make it valuable. And so often, this is a structure that happens at big companies. They set up a new innovation department and they fund it. You fund it to the tune of $25 million, $10 to $25 million or something. You got budget for 100 pilots or something over the next 10 years. And what they do is they get a big like sample data collection from all the parts of the organization, and it's like now you have a data sandbox, and you can play with the data here. And the data scientists are like, holy crap, this is going to be the best. And they produce some really amazing models, and they'll be more predictable than ours sometimes. But they'll use data from everywhere, data that was just gotten once, data that cost $10 million to get, data from LexisNexis, data from Facebook. They'll use everything. You cannot do anything with it. What if you need to make another prediction next month? Oh, well, we gotta go get all the data that went into the model. Well, what's important in the model? I don't know, we used a lot of AWS credits. It's a neural net, who knows?
Man, you're hitting close to home there.
I know. We actually spent $43,000 in a day last month.
So I
which
do
is
a lot
less than
of
everyone's.
generative adversarial network training, which
Yeah.
if anyone here has ever worked with those, it's painful in the credit spending department.
Yeah, right.
That is another good thing to think of though, is that if you do want to throw a lot of money at AI, make sure that you're doing it well, because there's no point in throwing $150,000 out the door in a month unless you are fairly sure that that $150,000 is going to give you the returns you're looking for. And a common mistake is that people think, hey, I'm just going to throw a bunch of money at this AI company and hope that the results are good, and then they find out that, hey, nothing's really happening with this and it's not looking the way I wanted it to, and so AI actually doesn't work. Please do not make that mistake. Good AI can cost a lot of money, depending on your needs to train models, and obviously all of the data scientists and everything that go along with it. But when it's done right, it is really worth it.
Great. On that, let's thank our panelists for